All right, good morning. Good morning, everybody. Just want to do a quick check, make sure no issues with the audio. And we're going to jump in and get started. Hope everyone's doing okay. My apologies, I intended to jump in at 7, but ran into a little setback with the school this morning and didn't quite allow me to get going as quickly as I would like, but we are here now and ready to talk about all things arrays and JavaScript and just answer any questions that you may have pertaining to arrays or anything in the JavaScript family. But would like to keep the topic to arrays for those that might not be as familiar with arrays and want to ask questions. But I appreciate everyone that is stopping by. Would love to know where you are stopping in from. We'll give it another minute. Make sure we don't have any audio issues. Hey, what's going on, my friend? Good morning. Thank you for stopping by and the continued support as always. Good morning. Just going to do a discussion on JavaScript arrays and do a few little practice problems. And I'm going to let you go to enjoy the rest of your day. Yep. Good morning. Yep, so welcome. So today we're just doing arrays in JavaScript, some questions that you may have, going over some methods that you may or may not be familiar with, how and when you want to use them, just some best practices with them in general. And if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer those. So basically just looking to cover some of the main methods: push, pop, splice, looping, finding, filtering, and transforming with map and reduce. You'll see each of the codes and concerns, you'll see each of the methods line by line, and we'll kind of talk about it in general. So just taking a look at the documentation, and my favorite place to go to is the developer Mozilla. Hey. Huh? Throw me on your live and just mute it. Thank you, so I get that watch time, chat. Huh? Yeah, show me something great. Be careful. Yeah, girl. Yeah, girl. Yeah, girl. No, it's not, girl. It's ball back there, though. So the array object, as with arrays and other programming languages, enables storing a collection of multiple items under a single variable name and has members of performing common array operations. In JavaScript, arrays aren't primitives, but are instead array objects with the following core characteristics. Number one, JavaScript arrays are resizable and can obtain a mix of different data types. When those characteristics are undesirable, use type arrays instead. So basically what that's saying is that an array can actually have different types of data within the array, meaning that you can have a number, you can have a string, you can have a Boolean, all within the same array that'll be assigned the same name. They'll just have different places within the array itself and different ways to access it. Good morning. Just going over arrays in JavaScript, answering any questions that you may have pertaining to it. No question is dumb, and just talking about arrays, all of the methods, arrays one-on-one is what we're covering today. And we're going to do a little quick Q&A at the end for those that may want to get a little confirmation or go a little deeper, or just ask questions pertaining to different methods with arrays. So thank you for stopping by. Would love to know where you're stopping by from. Feel free to leave it in the respective chat. But with that said, I'll just keep going. The second core characteristics of an array is JavaScript arrays are not associative arrays, and so array elements cannot be accessed using arbitrary strings as indexes, but must be accessed using non-negative integers or their respective string form as indexes. So what that's basically saying is that if you want to access an element in an array, you can't use a negative number. Remember, indexes actually start with 0 when it's actually like going to talk about it in the next section there, but you can't access it with a negative integer. It must be accessed with a positive number starting with the first element, which would typically be 0, all the way up into however many elements are in the array. The third core characteristic is JavaScript arrays are 0 index. The first element of the array is at index 0, the second is 1, and so on. And the last element in the array will be the array's length property minus 1. So the way we would count them is the first index in the array is going to always start with 0. You would think it would start with 1, but no, it starts with 0. And then if you want to get the last element in the array, regardless of if it is 5 items in the array or 1 million, well, maybe 1 million may be a bit much. You can count how many items are in the array starting with 1, but if you want to gain access to it, you just have to say -1, and that's going to give you that last property in the array, which will also be the exact same thing as using the length method that is referencing here in the documentation. And then the final core concept is JavaScript array copy operations create a shallow copies. All standard built-in copy operations with any JavaScript object create a shallow copies rather than deep copies, meaning that it's just emulating or creating another copy of the array, not actually changing the array that you initially access itself. So if you're using one of the methods, it's not going to change the method. It's not going to change the array. All it's going to do is give you a shallow copy of it so that you can update it, manipulate it, change it, multiply the values, make the characters uppercase, change it from true to false, whatever it is that you want to do. That's basically what that is indicating with the core characteristics. And just for a quick recap for those that have just joined, we're just doing a quick lesson on JavaScript arrays, talking deep dive in the documentation for those that were interested in how to actually read the documentation and apply what you're learning. That's what we're looking to do today while learning a little bit about JavaScript arrays. So we've just started so far, and what we've covered is that the array is an object with other arrays, just like in any other programming language. It allows you to store multiple values of different data types within the array. And there are 4 main core characteristics. Arrays are resizable and contain a mix of different data types, which is what we just covered. JavaScript arrays are not associative arrays, and so array elements cannot be accessed using arbitrary strings or index. They must be accessed using non-negative integers, meaning that if you want to gain access to an item in the array, you must start with, it must be a positive number. It can't be a negative number to access it, unless, as indicated here, JavaScript arrays are 0 index. The first element of the array is index 0. The last or the second is 1, and so on. The last value in the array is going to be the length, which would be -1. So that would be the only negative integer that you'll use to actually access an item in the array is -1. Everything else has to be done with a positive number. And then the JavaScript array copy operations create a shallow copy. It's not actually manipulating the initial array, but it's just creating a quick copy of it so that you can make changes to it based upon your project's needs. So that's basically the core characteristics of arrays based on the Mozilla documentation. So next category is array indexes. Array objects cannot use arbitrary strings as element indexes as in associate array, but must use non-negative integers or their respective string forms. Setting or accessing via non-integers will not set or retrieve an element from the array list itself, but will set or access a variable associated with the array's object property collection. The array's object property and list of the array elements are separate, and the array's traversal and mutation operations cannot be applied to those named properties. Okay? An array element are properties in the same way that toString is a property to be specific. However, toString is a method. Nevertheless, trying to access an element of an array as follows throws a syntax error because the property name is not valid. So as you can see here, array.0 is going to give you an error because that's actually not a proper name or a valid way to write an array name in JavaScript. JavaScript syntax requires properties beginning with a digit to be accessed using the bracket notation instead of dot notation. It's also possible to quote the array indexes instead of, although usually not necessary. So this is just ways that you can access the different properties within an array. If you wanted to get the first item of the array, you wouldn't use dot, you would use brackets as indicated here. The 2 in years is coerced into a string by JavaScript engine through implicit toString conversion. As a result, the string with 2 and 02 would refer to 2 different slots of years. The object and the following example would be true. So as you can see, 0, 2, and 2 are going to refer to 2 different positions in the array per the documentation here. Years toString or years index 2, that's a string, does not equal years 02. Only years with the quotation of 2 is an actual array index. Years 02 is an arbitrary string property that will not be visited in an array iteration. Okay. Relationship between length and numerical properties. A JavaScript array's length property and numerical properties are connected. Several of the built-in methods, join, slice, index of, take into account the value of array's length property when they're called. Other methods, push, splice, also result in updates to an array length property. So in this example, we have a empty array named fruits, and we're using the dot push method. And if you're not familiar with dot push, this is going to allow you to add items to an array. And we'll just go through the documentation just so you can see it. The push method of array instance adds a specific element to the end of an array and returns the new length of the array. So if we were to add an item to this array, in this example, we have an array named animals, which has 3 elements: pigs at index 0, goats at 1, sheep at 2. And if we created a const named count and set it equal to animals.push, it's going to change it to 4 because now we've just pushed a new item to the end of the array, and the output now, instead of being 3, is going to be 4. And if we log into the console, we see that cows is now at the end of the array because we use the push method, which indicates that it's going to push a element to the end of the array and returns the new array length. So that's basically dot push and how it works and what it looks like. And in this example, if we said animals.push and we wanted to push chickens, cats, and dogs to the animals array that has pigs, goats, sheep, and cows, if we log it to the console, the output is going to be, we now have pigs, goats, sheep, cows. Those positions remain unchanged. However, we did add chickens, cats, and goats to the array. So now the array has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 elements. And remember, it's 0-based indexes. So technically, if you wanted to access anything, it would be whatever you're counting logically or however you would normally count it. You're going to include -1 because you want to because indexes of arrays start with zeros and not one. So just kind of keep that in mind. All right. When setting a property on a JavaScript array, when the property is a valid array index and that index is outside of the current bonds of the array, the engine will update the array's length property accordingly. So let's take a look at this example. So we have a array named fruits, and we want to add an item to the index of 5 named mango. And if we log into the console, we see that we now have mango at the index of 5. And if we were to use the object.keys method, this will allow us to see the indexes of elements that are currently in the array. In this particular array or example, we have items at indexes 0, 1, 2, and 5, nothing at 3 and 4, and that's possible. But let's just see what it actually does when we try to return it. And in this example, if we log fruits to the console and ask for the length, it's going to give us 6. Increasing the length extends the array by adding empty slots without creating a new element, not even undefined. So if we were to add an item to an array at position 6, but we don't have 6 elements in the array, it's just going to indicate that the position of the indexes that don't have an element is just going to be 0. It's not going to actually say undefined or print anything else out. It's just going to state that there isn't anything at the indexes. And I'll just read that again. Increasing the length extends the array by adding empty slots without creating any new elements, not even undefined. So in this instance, the length of fruits is equal to 10. And if we log it to the console, we have banana at 0, apple at 1, peach at 2. 3 and 4 are empty, remember, based on this. So it is empty times 2. Then we have mango, which we added at 5. And then we're going to have 4 additional empty slots to give us 10 as a length of the array. And if we were to go object.keys and log fruit, we'll only see items at indexes 0, 1, 2, and 5. But the length of it is still 10 because remember, we added empty elements. We added empty elements at the indexes where we didn't have any items because we wanted to add mango at 5, and we set the length of fruits to 10. Decreasing the length property does, however, delete elements. So if we wanted to decrease the array size, it will remove the items that we do not wish to use from that array. So in this example, we have fruits.length is set equal to 2. So we're setting the array length to 2. And if we log object.keys fruit, which is the name of the array, to the console, it's going to give us just 0 and 1 because we've set the length to 2 now. And if we log the length of this to the console array, we see that it's set to 2. And we'll just take a look at the length page just to get a little further explanation of it. The length data property of an array instance represents the number of elements in the array. The value is an unassigned 32-bit integer that is always numerically greater than the highest index in the array, meaning that it is always going to be 1 greater than whatever is in the index in the array, hence the reason you would use -1 in order to get the last item in the array. So if you were to take a look at it, here's just what it looks like, and there's an actual quick editor embedded in the documentation if you wanted to play with it. I'm going to see how this thing works. I'm not sure if it'll work on my computer or not. Let's go. What is this? Shirt, shoes, socks. Let's go hat. And if we run it, we see that we have 5 items because that's the length of the array. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The length of the array is 5. But remember, when you count the index because you want to access an item, you're going to start with 0. So we'll say console console.log. We'll gather clothing. Console.log clothing. And if we want to access item 1, we get shoes. Now let's access item 4. We get hats. And if we were to do 5, even though we don't have an item at 5, we get undefined because we don't have anything there. So as we can see, that's basically how the .length property works when working with arrays. Array methods and empty slots. Array methods have different behaviors when encountering empty slots in the sparse arrays. In general, older methods for each treat empty slots differently from indexes that contain undefined. Methods that have special treatment for empty slots. And here, I'm not going to read through all of these, but as you can see, they're listed here. Iteration methods such as for each don't visit empty slots at all. Other methods such as concat, copy within, etc., preserve empty slots when doing a copy. So in the end, the array is still sparse. And here's a quick example. I have a const named colors that has some colors in the array. If we wanted to add purple at the index of 5, we use for each to loop over each. What you get in this example using for each is not going to print anything for those missing indexes of 3 and 4. It's only going to give what you actually have, which is 0, 1, 2, and index 5. And if we did reverse, which does identify empty slots, you'll see that you get purple, 2 empty slots, blue, yellow, red. Red is now the last index, yellow, second to last, blue. And notice the difference when you use reverse, you actually get empty spaces times 2. But if you were to just use for each, it actually doesn't include those at all. So that's what it was referring to here. Methods that have special treatments for empty slots. Here are the methods. I would recommend that you just go through each just to kind of get a brief understanding. Wouldn't spend too much time with it, but it is good food for thought depending upon your project needs, what you're actually looking to do. That way you'll know which method you'll want to use in the event you need to do anything with the array, whether it is for each, whether it is map, reverse, etc. If it is reverse, you may have to care for some empty slots. If it is for each, you're going to get only what's represented within the array. So just kind of keep that in mind. Newer methods do not treat empty slots specially and treat them as if they contain undefined. Methods that conflate empty slots with undefined elements include the following: entries, fill, find index. I'm not going to list them all there, but let's just take a look at the example so that we can break down what it's referring to. Have the same const named colors that's equal to an array with 3 color elements. We'll add the color purple to the index of 5, create a const named iterator using the .keys method. And for each key in the iterator, we just want to log it, the key to the console and the color with the index. So the key is going to represent the position and the color is just going to represent the corresponding color at that index. So the output in this example is 0, which is 1, 0, which is red, 1 is yellow, 2 is blue, 3 and 4 are both undefined, and 5 is going to be purple. So with this method, you actually do get an undefined message, which is different than the empty 2 slots from before. And also with for each, you don't get anything at all. So just notice that that's the difference. And based upon, like I said, your project, you'll want to know what each method does, because depending upon the method and your project needs, that's going to kind of determine which one of these methods you want to use, because you don't want to return undefined, you don't want to return empty, you may want to return empty slots. It just really just depends on what it is that you're doing with your project. And then if we were to use the to reverse these items, notice that we're going to get undefined. for the empty slots. Purple will go to the beginning of the array. Undefined and undefined now represent the two next slots in the array. Blue, yellow, and red round out the end of the array. So that's what you can expect when you use toReverse, which is a little different than reverse, where reverse gave you empty slots, empty times two. toReverse is going to give you undefined for those empty slots. So just kind of know that you may not want to use toReverse if that array could potentially have some empty data, because you're going to get undefined back, and depending upon what you're doing, you may need to care for undefined. So copying methods and mutating data. Some methods do not mutate the existing array that the array method was called on, but instead return a new array. They do so by first constructing a new array and then populating it with elements. The copy always happens shallowly. The method never copies anything beyond the initial created array. Elements of the original array are copied into the new array as follows. Objects. The object reference is copied into the new array. Both the original and the new array refer to the same object. That is, if reference object is modified, the changes are visible to both the new and the original. Okay. Primitive types such as strings, number, and booleans, not string, number, or boolean objects, their values are copied into the new array. So it's basically just saying that we get whenever we want to mutate data or create a new array, it's actually going to create a new array. And it does allow us to make changes to that array based upon whatever our needs are. Other array methods mutate the array that the method was called on, in which case their return value differs depending upon the method. Sometimes a reference to the same array, sometimes the length of the new array. The following methods create a new array by accessing this.constructor symbols to determine the constructor use: concatenate, filter, flatten, map, slice, and splice to construct the array of remove elements that's returned. And the following methods always create a new array with the array-based constructor: toReverse, to sort it, to splice, and with. The following table lists the methods that mutate the original array and corresponding non-mutating alternative. And here's a copy of those methods. I won't read those to you, but certainly reference this documentation and become familiar with it, at least enough to where you know what method works for the project that you're looking to use. And then from there, you'll be able to use it on a frequently basis. And I wouldn't recommend having these memorized, but I would recommend becoming familiar with them and knowing what it is that you need to do based upon your project's need, because you don't want to use a method that's going to return undefined. You may want to use a method that maintains the integrity of the length of the array. So you may want to not use one that's going to ignore those empty slots, but maybe use one that acknowledges them and allows you to update the array with data. So just spend some time looking at it. And here's kind of a breakdown of what it looks like. We have an array and we're using the copy within using indexes 0, 1, and 2. The .slice .copy within does not mutate the array, but in this example here, it doesn't mutate it as well, even when we destructure it. So just kind of know how this works, because based upon your project needs, that'll kind of determine which one of these you're going to use. Iterative methods. Many array methods take a callback function as an argument. The callback function is called sequentially and at most once for each element in the array. And the return value of the callback function is used to determine the return value of the method. They all share the same signature. So you have a method, you have a callback function, and this argument. What a callback function takes is 3 arguments: the element, the current element being processed in the array, the index of the current element being processed in the array, and the array itself. The array method was called upon. When the callback function is expected to return depends on the array. Excuse me, reread that. The callback function is expected to return depends on the array methods that was called. The disarg argument defaults to undefined, will be used as the this value when calling callback function. Um, the this value, which is this is a keyword, ultimately observable by callback function, is determined according to the usual rules. A callback function is non-strict. Primitive this value are wrapped into the objects and undefined or null. So that's quite a bit of depth as to what it can and cannot do. I would certainly recommend spending some time with this because, like I said, depending upon what you're looking to do, that's going to kind of determine it. And just kind of know with you can always pass in a callback function to kind of help. What's the best way to say this? To kind of help manipulate the array or to gather the data that you need. Just know that it does take in 3 arguments: the callback function, the index, and the actual array itself that you're looking to manipulate or update. And then based upon that, you're able to just use it as any other function. So iterative methods iterate the array like the following, with a lot of technical details omitted. You have a function named method. It's taking a callback and it's saying this argument. And in this example, it looks like it's looking for the length, and we're using a traditional for loop to iterate over to create an iterator. And if I in this, then we want to say const results is equal to callback function dot call, and then we're passing in the argument, the index, and this do something with the result may return early. So based upon what you're iterating, it's going to ask that it does something and then return it back based upon whatever logic you want to include inside of this portion of the function. Note, not all methods do the I in this test. The find index, find last, and find last index methods do not, but other methods do. So that's good to know that, hey, these particular methods don't allow you to use the iterator the same way that you would with the others. The length is memorized before the loop starts. This affects how insertions and deletions during iteration are handled. See the mutating initial array. So let's take a quick look at that right quick. A mutating initial array in iterative methods. An iterative method do not mutate the array on which it is called, but the function provided as a callback function can. The key principle to remember is that the only indexes between 0 and the array length minus 1, which is the last index, are visited, where array length is the length of the array at the time the array method was first called, but the element passed to the callback is the value at the time the index is visited. Therefore, callback function will not visit any element added beyond the array's length when the call to the iterative method began. Changes to already visited indexes do not cause callback functions to be invoked on them. Again, if an existing yet unvisited element of the array is changed by the callback function, its value passed to the callback function will be the value at the time the element gets visited. Remove elements are not visited. The following example is used for each method as an example, but other methods that visit indexes in ascending order working the same way. We'll first define a helper function. And as you can see, that here's a quick demonstration of it. So just wanted to see what it was referring to with the array methods and what it can and can't, in the limitations of the array methods when using certain methods on an array, and how it doesn't allow you to iterate the same way as other iterators do. Generic array methods. Array methods are always generic. They don't access any internal data of the array object. They only access the array elements through the length property and the index elements. This means that they can be called on array-like objects as well. So in this example, you have a object, a key of 0, value 1, A, key of 1, value B, length 2. If you console.log array.prototype.join.call array like and adding the plus sign, you're going to get A plus B. And basically what this is doing is grabbing this array and adding the plus sign to the values, and that is what it will log to the console. So I'm not going to read through all of the different methods and features of an array, but I did want to spend a little bit of time and kind of talk about them, everything, some of the things that you can do with them, and some of the limitations based upon what you're looking to get done, whether you're looking to iterate over an array, whether you're looking to create a new array, whether you're looking to update data in an array. It really just kind of depends on what you're looking to do, will determine which method that you'll want to utilize. For me, with projects, I typically use .map whenever I'm grabbing data from a external source that has the items in an array, whether you're pulling something from a database or whether you're pulling something from some mock data that you created. .map allows you to access that array and allow you to display the data onto the screen without impacting the original array. And when I say display the data on the screen, allow you to iterate over it without changing it. Typically, you know that the data within the database at this scale anyway doesn't include any undefined elements in the array because everything is going to always be there. It's going to be sequential. But as the data set increases, you'll certainly need to care for undefined elements inside of the array, whether you want to display that, whether or if you want to just say that that index doesn't exist. You really need to understand which method that you want to use based upon the project that you're utilizing and what you want the end user experience to be. So certainly a great read and a resource that you'll probably use rather frequently just to make sure that you are utilizing the appropriate method for your project's needs. So I think what I want to do next is do a little bit of array practicing, just practicing some of the methods that it spoke about with the array on how to update it and what response we get back based upon the different methods that we use. So I think I will work on that now. Give me just a second. Thank you so much for stopping by. Just wanted to have a little bit of discussion on JavaScript arrays and some of the array methods and what you can and can't do with arrays and what are some of the best methods to use based upon your project needs. So just went through the array documentation. Now we're just going to spend a little bit of time with some practice on our own. And I would recommend to anyone that is just getting started to certainly leverage code wars and different coding exercise platforms to really kind of reinforce some of this learning so that you're comfortable with different array methods and what to do and what to use based upon what you're looking to get accomplished with the array. Absolutely. Okay, good morning. Yes, just talked about all things arrays in JavaScript. And now I think we're going to spend a little bit of time just kind of doing some practice. Yep. Give me 1 second. Mm, 1 second here. Yes, good morning. Yep, just doing a quick discussion on JavaScript arrays. Feel free to ask any questions that you may have, but I appreciate you stopping by and showing some support. It means a lot, really does. uh, yeah, just trying to get everything set up on my end right now. Give me a moment. Yeah, I have to work a little later on today, so I wanted to jump in today because I may be late at work this evening and may not be able to go live later on this evening. So I decided to change it up a little bit and jump in this morning. Yep. I'm almost there. Uh, that one, not that one. I think it's this one. I think that'll work. I don't know if you can't see it or need me to reposition anything, but I think this should work. Just gonna do some quick little JavaScript array method practice methods. Can actually go here. All right. And I'm going to create a const name kids and set it equal to Jace, Jazz, Jada, Jack. And if we wanted to grab the first item in the array, we would go console.log. Just going to add some one. First kid. Row kids. 0. Notice that this doesn't exist. So the first kid is going to be undefined because we don't have a kid or a name listed at index of 9. But if I change this to 0, the first kid is going to be Jace because we do have someone at the index of 0, and that is the beginning of any array. So we're always going to have someone at 0. And if we wanted to capture the second name in the array, we'll just go 1, which will be Jazz. The third will be 2, which will be Jada. And the fourth will be 3, which will be Jack. If we wanted to get, and that is, this is, we'll say, array name and accessing kids in array. Perfect. So now we know we have additional methods that we can leverage to help out with this as well. So let's just say that we want to capture the length of the array. And if you recall, there is a method for that in the documentation that can help us with that. And the name of that method is .length. So if we wanted to get the length of the array, we would say console.log, just so we can get something to the length of array. No, I'll keep it cleaner. We'll say number of kids, and then we'll go kids.length. And as you can see, we'll say number of kids in array. As you can see, the number of kids is now listed at 4. What's going on, my brother? What's up, Guitar James? How you doing, my friend? Thank you for stopping by, man. I appreciate the support. Certainly appreciate the comment in the chat as well. Just to kind of give you a quick rundown, man. We're just doing JavaScript array methods today, talking all things arrays and a few methods that you can use in your project and the differences between some of the methods, how some methods will return all items in the array, whether they are undefined or empty. Some methods will only give you what's actually listed in the array itself. So really just kind of need to know what method it is that you want to utilize, but ultimately, I guess more importantly, what it is that you want to return to the end user or to the database or whatever it is that you're using. And then once you know that, then you'll know which method you want to use based upon your project's needs. So just kind of going through that, talked about all of those things earlier, and now just spending some time going over some of the methods. So look, again, I appreciate the support, my brother. And if you got any questions, don't hesitate to ask. I am here for it. But the dot length method, as mentioned, is going to give us the number of items in the array itself. And we know that if you notice, once I typed dot, we get a list of several methods that we can use: push, map, for each, length, join, concatenate, copy within. It wouldn't necessarily be appropriate in this usage of it, but you can see that there's a long list of methods: pop, reduce, reduce right, reverse. And I understand that this is where a lot of the confusion comes in with JavaScript over maybe some of the other languages, because you don't have so many methods and so many ways to do things. It's a little more concise when it comes to that. But the good thing is this does allow quite a bit of flexibility. Uh, Yep. Not today, but I absolutely will. I will add that to my list, node list, and iterating through them. Yep, I sure will. I will. I'll add that to my to do list and make sure that I include that in a upcoming stream. I sure will. I appreciate the idea, man. It's not a bad one at all. Not a bad one at all. Yep. So if we wanted to get the last item in the array, remember what we would use is the um yeah, too many methods, man. And that's part of people's confusion when learning JavaScript. I know at least it was for me and some folks I've worked with over the years, is that there's so many different ways to do things, and it can become confusing on which way to use and which method to use based upon your needs. So that's why always suggest to reference the documentation. I know it's not the funnest part of programming is reading the docs, but once you get a better understanding of what each method can do, you can then implement it into your project's needs, and it should make life a lot easier for you. Yeah, it is a lot, man. I agree. I totally agree. But as things continue to change and continue to grow, the docs are gonna always be our best friend to kind of help with making sure we stay on task and making sure that we are utilizing the right method to get the job done. Yep, yep. So what if we wanted to add a kid to the kids array? I'm sure my wife wouldn't have an issue with that. Um, so to add a kid, remember, right, man, going crazy. Slice, splice, probably got one name, lice, tice, all kind of stuff, man. Right. But if you wanted to add a kid, remember you would use push. And remember, push is going to add a kid to the end of the array. So I'm gonna grab the array name, and as you can see, here's what's currently listed. And if we use dot push, and we'll just add a kid name, we'll go Jackie. Now, if we want to log the kids, so dot log all kids, and then we'll go kids. Notice that the array now has Jace, Jazz, Jada, Jack, and Jackie because, and if you notice, the original array did not include Jackie. The reason it does include Jackie now is because we use the dot push method to add Jackie to the end of the array. The other way that we can add a kid to this array is by specifying the index. So let's just say that currently we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 kids, and we want to add a six. Lord have mercy. But I'm instead of adding it at index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, instead of adding it at 5, I'm going to add it at index 6. And we're going to set this kid name to, let's name this child Jacob. Jacob. And now if we console.log all kids, kids, now notice that we still have Jace, Jazz, Jada, Jack. They remain unchanged. We still have Jackie in the array, and we have a blank item in the array, and then we have Jacob. And the reason it treated it this way is because we added a kid at index 6 manually, but we did not have a kid at index 5. So with JavaScript, it does allow us to specify the index, and if we don't have an item at that index, it will still work, but it'll just be a blank index. Now here's where you would want to be careful, because if you were iterating over this list and displaying it, let's just say in a grid format, so that you can see all users within the database or all the kids that are within the database. Depending upon the method that you're using, you could return either empty or a blank array. And you will want to care for that within your logic so that you're not presenting blank data to the screen. Or you would want to care for it on the front end so that by the time it gets saved into the database, you're not getting blank data like an empty string or empty array or empty content, and just allowing a user to intentionally or unintentionally manipulate the data within your database and cause it to not be on structure. So just make sure that you kind of keep that in mind as you're adding items and as you are iterating through it and presenting data on screen. You just want to make sure that depending upon what you're looking to do with it, it does treat those items the way you intend for it to. So this is in the event we wanted to add a kid, we can use push and you can specify the index. But if we wanted to remove a kid from array, we know that we can get that done with pop. So if we wanted to remove a kid, we'll say kid. Let's go console.log. Let's go kids.pop, not splice pop. It's going to remove the last item in the array. And then the last item in this instance is Jacob. Brother Jacob has been removed from the array. And if we console.log current kids, notice that it goes back to the array that we initially had when we added Jackie, and it did not keep the empty slot in the, or the empty index in the array, because we removed the last child, there's no need to keep index 5 if there isn't an element in index 5. So we only have the current kids listed here on screen. Perfect, 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 perfect. Mm-hmm. Now, let's say that we wanted to add a kid to the beginning of the array. We can use, I think it is unshift. So let's say we went to go console.log current kids, and let's go kids. Then we'll say kids dot unshift. In the beginning of this array, we're going to add a child name. And I can't even think. I just got so many kids. I can't think of a new kid name. Let's just go Lisa. Now let's console.log kids. We'll go kids. Notice that we add kids to end of array. Notice in this example, we add a kid to the start of the array. So we'll start with the initial kids that's in the array. And we have Jace, Jazz, Jada, Jack, and Jackie. And if we use the unshift method, which adds an item to the beginning of the array, the kids are now Lisa, Jace, Jazz, Jada, Jack, and Jackie. It's a quick and easy way to add a child to the beginning of the array. Now, I don't have a child named Lisa, and all of my kids have a JA name. So let's go ahead and remove. let's go ahead and remove this child from the kids. This name, excuse me, from the kids array, and we're going to remove the first item from the array. And the method that we'll use for that is shift. So we'll say remove first element from kids array, console.log current kids, and then we'll go kids dot unshift, and we actually don't have to pass anything into it if I'm not mistaken. We'll go console.log new appropriate new kids array. I'm sorry. It should be not unshift, it should be shift. There we go. And as you can see with unshift, that removes the first child from the array. Prior to using unshift, we had Lisa, Jace, Jazz, Jada, Jack, and Jackie. Once we use unshift, we remove the first item from the array. And now we just have Jace, Jazz, Jada, Jack, and Jackie. And I don't have a daughter named Jackie, at least not at the moment. So let me let's go ahead and remove the last child from the array. And based on this quick little list, we can just use pop. So we'll go kids.pop, and we'll console.log current kids array, and go kids. Yep. Yeah, I do have a few, man. uh, yeah. I do. But I love them all, man, and I'm super super proud of them. Yep. I appreciate it, man. I intend to do more of these. I hope you found some value in it for sure. But yeah, I do have a lot of kids for sure. I am a proud father. Absolutely. Console.log. Mm, 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 mm. Let's go remove last kids dot pop. So in this instance, it's saying undefined because it's already been removed. Perfect. Okay. So I think with that, I need to go jump in the shower and get ready to go to my 9 to 5. I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial on arrays, referring to the documentation and just some of the common array methods. Next time we'll cover looping and iterating through the array. We'll maybe pick that up later on this evening, but I do need to jump in the shower and get ready to jet now. So thank you for your time and attention. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe as well. Leave a comment on what you'd like to see next, and I'll see you in the next one.